The notion that scientists and mainstream media are intentionally deceiving the public about climate change is a pervasive conspiracy theory that has gained significant traction in recent years. Proponents of this idea argue that there is a deliberate effort to manipulate and distort the facts about climate change, often citing motivations such as political agendas, financial gain, or a desire to exert control over the population. However, a closer examination of the available evidence and the underlying mechanisms of the scientific community and media landscape reveals a more nuanced and complex picture. One of the primary drivers of the perception that scientists and media are lying about climate change is the inherent complexity of the topic itself. Climate change is a multifaceted issue spanning various disciplines, including atmospheric science, oceanography, ecology, and economics. The sheer scope and intricacy of the subject matter can lead to misunderstandings and misinterpretations, which can be exacerbated by the inevitable uncertainties and limitations associated with scientific inquiry. Moreover, the fact that climate change is a gradual and often imperceptible process can make it difficult for the general public to intuitively grasp its significance and urgency. Another factor contributing to the mistrust of scientists and media is the influence of special interest groups and ideological think tanks. These organizations often have vested interests in perpetuating climate change denial or downplaying its severity, and they may employ various tactics to disseminate misinformation and create the impression of controversy or debate within the scientific community. By cherry-picking data, highlighting minor discrepancies, and quoting outlier opinions, these groups can create a false narrative that suggests the scientific consensus on climate change is more divided than it actually is. The media landscape also plays a significant role in shaping public perceptions of climate change. The 24-hour news cycle, social media, and the proliferation of online echo chambers can amplify marginal voices and create an illusion of equivalence between established scientific facts and contrarian views. Furthermore, the pursuit of ratings, clicks, and advertising revenue can lead some media outlets to prioritize sensationalism and controversy over accuracy and balance. This can result in the spread of misinformation and the normalization of climate change denial, which can have far-reaching consequences for public awareness, education, and policymaking. Despite these factors, the overwhelming majority of the scientific community agrees that human-induced climate change is real, driven primarily by the emission of greenhouse gases from fossil fuel combustion, deforestation, and other human activities. The evidence for this conclusion is based on decades of rigorous research, observations, and experiments, which have been consistently reinforced by multiple lines of evidence, including temperature records, melting glaciers, and shifts in precipitation patterns. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change IPCC, a reputable and authoritative body composed of leading climate scientists from around the world, has thoroughly documented the causes, consequences, and potential mitigation strategies for climate change. It is essential to recognize that the scientific process, by its very nature, involves debate, criticism, and revision. Scientists are not infallible, and the pursuit of knowledge is an ongoing and iterative process. However, the fact that there may be some degree of disagreement or uncertainty within the scientific community does not imply that the fundamental principles of climate change are in question. Rather, these debates often center on the nuances of climate modeling, the effectiveness of specific policy interventions, or the optimal strategies for adapting to the impacts of climate change. In conclusion, while there are certainly instances of misinformation and manipulation surrounding climate change, the notion that scientists and mainstream media are engaged in a deliberate conspiracy to deceive the public is unfounded and misguided. The complexity of the issue, the influence of special interest groups, and the media landscape all contribute to public misconceptions and mistrust. Nevertheless, the scientific consensus on climate change is clear, and it is essential to rely on credible sources of information, critical thinking, and evidence-based decision-making to navigate the challenges posed by this critical global issue. By acknowledging the real and perceived shortcomings of the scientific community and media, we can work towards a more informed and nuanced public discourse, ultimately facilitating more effective and sustainable responses to the climate crisis.